Welcome to the For Love and Money podcast, the show where business and social purpose meet to inspire a movement for positive change. Here's your host, Carolyn Butler-Madden.
On the 9th of February 2009, our guest today lost most of what he owned in the Black Saturday bushfires. Grateful to be alive and overwhelmed by the support he received, David Laity decided to begin a wine business that gave back, and so began Goodwill Wine, Australia's only certified social enterprise wine company. Now, since its inception, Goodwill Wine has donated close to $500,000 to Australian charities by empowering its customers to choose which charity they want to receive half of their profits from the case of wine. In 2019, Goodwill Wine took on its first round of angel investment, allowing it to undergo a rebrand, extend its range of wine offerings, and embark upon a substantial growth phase. Since then, the business has seen a 500% increase in the amount it has been able to donate to charity. In an intensely competitive market, David has managed to cut through all of the noise simply by embedding purpose into the very heart of his business's DNA. If you haven't come across Goodwill Wine yet, you will want to listen to this episode. There is everything to love about them. Their wines are fabulous. I know, I drink them, and they donate 50% of their profits to charity. Does that mean for every bottle you buy, the world gets a little bit better? Why, yes, if you put it like that, it most certainly does. David, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Carolyn.
Let's kick off with a question I ask all of my guests. When you think about purpose in business, what role do you think love has to play in it, if any at all?
I think love does have a role to play in business. I think the role is entirely up to us to choose how much it plays. And I think if you can find something that you love to do, and if you then apply that to a business, then I think the rest just follows naturally. I think those around you will feel it. And, while I'm still small, I certainly love what I do. And I know that's infectious. It spills over, from employees right through to customers. So I think love can play an enormous role in business.
Thank you. Thanks, David. And, I'm really keen to get into your story because, when I read about the story of Goodwill Wine and where it started, to me, it exemplified totally that it was inspired by love. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself here. Can you please share what led you to starting Goodwill Wine?
Well, I lost, as you said in the intro there, I was affected by Black Saturday. I was living in a little house between King Lake and Marysville, and just fortunately wasn't there when the fires came through, but ended up losing most of what I owned. And I guess I was faced with, what do you do? A lot of people have since, the summer bushfires and all the floods have all been in the same position, which is a really horrible position to be in. And I'd never reached out for help before. And I was faced with really no other option but to reach out for help. And when I did, the help was there. And it was really quite overwhelming. And it was, there were organisations and the government helped, but really it was all the people putting tins into coins into tins around the country that I feel changed my life, and so I was given $15,000 through the Red Cross bushfire appeal, and I was given the opportunity, I guess, to start again, and instead of replacing everything that was lost. Of course, you wouldn't replace everything that was lost with $15,000. I decided to try to do something to pay back that generosity and help the charities that helped me at that time. And so the idea came to source some wines and build a website. And I knew some good vineyards in the Yarra Valley at the time, and still do. And so I got my first little batches of wine and approached the charities that helped me, and just hoped that maybe, there were enough ethical people out there perhaps who like their wine, who might want to come and join me on that journey. And so Goodwill Wine began. The idea was to give back 50% of my profit, and the business has grown. We grew very slowly at first, but it's begun to take on a bit of a life of its own, and it's pretty exciting.
And so this was after 2009. When did you actually start the business?
So I started in 2010. I got put through a program. So you kind of, when you go through a disaster, you get put on disaster benefits, I guess. But I didn't want to sit on disaster benefits, and so I applied for a course at the time. I'm not sure if it exists anymore. It's called the 7 East program, and they take you through a business idea and give you 6 months of training to help you grow it. So I removed myself from the disaster relief aid and began doing this little course, which I guess prepared me for starting a tiny little business. And so it started as a sole trader, and switched over to a company about 2.5 years ago, when I took on that angel investment you talked about.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty extraordinary to go through what you went through with the bushfires, and then to come out of that and actually start a business in an area. Am I understanding this correctly? Like, you hadn't been in the wine business before, had you?
No, I was a filmmaker in my
So what made you get into wine?
I had an idea that I think was a pretty good idea. It was putting advertising onto pool balls, putting beer advertising more specifically onto pool balls. So if you went into a pub, you kind of went up to the table and you played, Cooper's Red or Cooper's Green or Tooheys Old, Tooheys New, and I figured that, if someone nicked that ball from the table and it sat on their desk, then that would be good advertising forevermore for that beer
In
company.
good old Aussie tradition, right?
Yeah, that's it. And so I kind of thought, well, what would that cost? I searched around the world for getting them made, and they started off being, the quotes for about $250, and I eventually got them down to about $20. And about 2 weeks before the fires, they turned up, the samples, and they were beautiful, and so they burn along with everything else.
Oh no!
Oh, it is what it is. And after the fires, I was just thinking about them and thinking, well, I've had all this help. Wouldn't it be great to, instead of making some huge corporation wealthy, wouldn't it be great to try to help make charities wealthy? And effectively, the wine, which I was right into at the time, I still am, are those pool balls. They were wine bottles rebranded on behalf of different charities, and the labeling has moved, the branding has moved since then, but that was the original idea. Was you could buy a bottle of wine, and instead of Cooper's Green, it had Sea Shepherd on it. So
love it, and I'm so glad you did channel that idea into wine rather than pool balls, because I and many others, get the incredible pleasure of enjoying them. And I'd like you tell us about the wine, because this isn't just a story about a social enterprise that does good in the world and gives to charity, and that's a brilliant story, and I do want to get into it. But I just want to put this idea, or take the idea off the table, that just because you're doing good, it doesn't mean that your quality is not high. So can you tell us about the wines?
Sure. So So the original idea of the business was to give something back, but I was really initially, and still am, driven to actually reward the supporters of good causes with decent quality wine. So the idea is that I tap into small runs, end of runs. There's all sorts of reasons why you might find a bottle that is unlabeled, and it's not that it's sitting in a 200,000 litre tank. It's a vineyard expected 2,000 cases from their vintage and ended up with 2,060 cases. They only had 2,000 cases worth of labels, and they won't go back to the printer for such a short run because it's just not cost effective. And so these little portions, little parcels of wines, which are exactly the same as the vineyards wines with the vineyards labels on, sit in sheds gathering dust. The vineyards aren't in the business of selling their unlabeled wine. It devalues their brand, and so I knew that a lot of these wines existed, and so I went out hunting for them. There's other reasons. So that's primarily where the wines come from. So yesterday I just picked up 40 cases of a Merlot, a 2016 Merlot that had been sitting in a shed, and it's just taken on these just beautiful secondary characteristics. And it's a nice wine. And so that vineyard was selling that wine for $28 a bottle. We'll get that wine online for around about $17.50, and so that pretty much is the philosophy, is that we'll tap into these little parcels. They're way too small for the big online operators to be bothered with, and it's a little bit more work, but we put them up for offer. Sometimes it might be a vineyard that let's say has a $50 Chardonnay, and that particular vintage didn't work out exactly as they planned. Maybe they got late rain, and so they feel like the wine isn't good enough to be a $50 wine, but they've established themselves as that premium kind of offering. And so I'll go in and take that wine off their hands, and it's not because it's a rubbish wine. It's not. It's a $25 wine, a $30 wine all day. It just isn't that premium $50. So we tap into those as well, and I'll stick that wine online for $16. And again, it's fulfilling that mission of rewarding, a supporter of a good cause with some decent drinkable wine.
And that's really interesting, that you've really pinpointed that you want to reward supporters of good causes. So I guess you're tapping into people's passion or love, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
for the causes that they care about, and you're inviting them to support them further by buying and enjoying your wine. That's the basic idea, yeah.
That is the basic idea, and so it's interesting as far as the customer love goes. We've got an extraordinary amount of love. Again, that's really quite overwhelming, and certainly in the earlier years, it was the messages that were coming back from customers that kept me going, because at that time I was rolling out a swag in a warehouse and sleeping with the wines for the first few years, and it's twofold, the love that's coming in from the customers. There's the love of wine, but it's threefold even. If you want to break it down, it's the love of the wine, it's the love of the charity that they support. But interestingly, and we did surveys, we've done lots of customer surveys, the first and foremost love is the love for an ethical business. And I really didn't expect that to be the case. I expected charity to be first and foremost, as the main reason for purchasing, and quality of wine to be the second, and supporting a social enterprise to be the third. But it is the complete reverse of that.
And that's the feedback you've got anecdotally from your customers?
Correct. So, that surveying, several hundred of our long-term customers through several different surveys that we've done, 200-300 customers at a time. we're about to go
And
in.
it doesn't surprise me. I mean, first of all, I've seen the reviews of Goodwill Wine, and they are glowing, absolutely glowing. I think you've got an average of 5 um, for
Yeah,
customer satisfaction.
yeah, yeah. We do. That's fantastic. I think we've had a couple of bad reviews, but when I've looked into it, it's not been from a customer. It's been from someone who is very angry, perhaps, that we're supporting. Well, in the one I'm thinking of, they're very angry that we're supporting Animals Australia, a terrorist organisation, or they're some really kind of unhinged
Yeah,
little
you're
bit
always going
feedback.
to get.
But you're always going to get that. And so, yes, even with those one or two kind of, 1-star reviews, which are nothing about the quality, it's just about the cause we've supported. We're sitting with an average of 5-star across, I think both Google and Facebook, the two main.
That's incredible.
Right.
And I guess the point that it reveals for me is that you are very clear. Your business is very clear on who are your, what I call your people like us. The kind of customers that you are attracting are people who actually they want to support ethical businesses. They want to buy, products that support charities. They also want to enjoy good quality wine. But when you talk about the couple of negative reviews or comments you've had from people, clearly they're not your people, right? And when you have that clarity of who are your people, then you are going to have the antithesis of that as well. You will never be vanilla. You will always appeal incredibly strongly to a certain segment, and you'll also not appeal incredibly strongly to others.
Well, I think that's true. It we've got a for the wine industry, which doesn't have a lot of loyalty as far as customers go. We've got an extraordinary amount of loyalty and return customers, and we only actually just recently set up a wine club where people can commit to ongoing purchases. The last 10 years we haven't, but we still have this customer return rate which is through the roof, and that is made up of those people that you speak of. They've bought into an idea. They've tried the wine. Usually I'll call the first purchase a pity purchase. They're buying for the charity, and there is an expectation that if supporting charity, there might well be something wrong with the quality. But when that wine turns up, all those quality concerns are dispersed, and people return. They get it.
There's something that struck me as a Goodwill Wine customer is that you have a very strong customer experience, a really good customer experience. So, you go onto the website and it's very clear what you do, what you stand for, and you can see very clearly, the charities that you support. And again, we will come back to that because I want to talk about that a little bit more. But the website it's light. It's got a really good vibe to it. It's a very positive, light vibe, and it just invites you to sort of go through and have a little look. And then what I love is, first of all, you select the wines you want, and you've got a number of different choices to help people make their decision. And then, when it comes to, you've got it in your cart, and then you get to choose the charity that you support, which is wonderful. Often businesses have a charity that they support, and there's a good reason that they do that, but your business is offering choice. So, you've got that broad appeal, which is awesome. But then when you receive the product, it's just beautiful. First of all, the labels, and you first see this on the website, and I want you to share with our listeners some of the messaging on the labels, because it's just such a wonderful vibe. And I loved it. And I found actually that all my Christmas gifts, all my client Christmas gifts, I bought Goodwill Wine because it felt very aligned with, what we care about. And the messaging on the labels is just so positive, uplifting, fun, and it was perfect. So as as gifts for Christmas, I don't think you can go past Goodwill Wine. And your handwritten notes as well. It just feels good. It's such a feel good purchase. You make your customers feel good about how they're spending the money. Did that all fall into place, or how did that sort of come about? The
I think,
labels and
yeah, it's been a work in progress. I think as we've fine tuned all the various aspects of the business. I was really lucky when I I've been writing the handwritten notes, for quite a few years. I clocked over 50,000 handwritten notes.
oh my
Last year.
goodness.
Yeah. But it's a really nice way to start the day. So I'll just kind of go through the orders, and I've started getting some help with the notes, which is great, because it could take me a couple of hours a day because I look right into who the customer is, have they purchased before, who have they supported before, what have they purchased before, what have they purchased this time, what can I tell them about this new wine that they're trying, and what part of the world do they live in, and what's happening up there right now. And so I kind of give every customer a lot of thought, and obviously during busier times there's less thought you can give. So at Christmas, there's limitations, but things like that have been going on all along. The labels themselves have undergone 3 different changes, I guess, rebrands, and that's just been a logistics issue. I initially started, as I mentioned before, the charities had their own label on each bottle, but if you can imagine buying mixed case and you're having to print out each label individually, and then go and hand label those wines, it just became 20 orders would take me all night, printing and then and so forth. So it just as the business grew, it just became unsustainable. So I moved to a second label, which actually was a piece of artwork from Reg Mombassa. I don't know if you know who Reg Mombassa is, but very famous Australian artist, and a beautiful piece of artwork. And then that became a standard label, but then the charities all had their own sticker on the side. But again, as the quantities grew, even just getting those stickers onto the sides of the bottles just became an extra chore that was taking too long. So I took on the angel investment, and was really fortunate to be able to pick and choose the investors who came on board. And so I chose people who could bring value to the business beyond the money, and surround them. I surrounded myself with people who were smarter than me in so many different areas. And so, one fellow called Michael Scarbeck, who's a creative director in the ad world, very successful. And so he's invested in the business, and he really drove that rebrand. And as far as the website goes, kind of one of my right-hand person, Loretta Ranieri, she kind of came on board to handle all the charities, but she's a web wizard, and so she completely built the new website up from scratch, and added so much of her own kind of flavor to it. And she'd been with the business for 2 years by that stage, and so all these little things have just evolved, but keeping our mission at its heart, as you said in your intro, in our DNA, and I think that's pretty evident, as you say, when you go to the website. And even our newsletters, we do once a week newsletters, which have a phenomenal open rate, and then click through rate to the website, and everyone just feels so engaged. And we talk about our impacts and the difference we're making to the world, and the new wines that are coming, and even sometimes I just use the newsletters to get something off my chest. But people seem to listen, and they seem to like it, and I'll get pages of 20, 30 emails back from from a newsletter from people who've read it and have become engaged, and then had something to tell me about that, which is just beautiful.
Isn't that amazing? And that, I mean, that is personal, like what you've built, and you've clearly invested so much of your own time and thought into this, but you've built a business, a personal business. You know, you take the fact that you said you not only do you do the handwritten notes, but you take the time to actually learn a little bit about your customer. I don't know how you can continue doing that as you scale, but that people really appreciate that kind of thing. They appreciate not feeling like just a number, you know.
I think, look, I think so, and time is going to become a problem. It already is, but it's something that I began when I was kind of hiding after the fires. I was hiding out in my little warehouse over in an area called Coldstream, just at the entrance to the Yarra Valley. It was incredibly isolated, and I think I was kind of going through a fair whack of PTSD at the time, and my customers were my only connection to the outside world. Really, wow. They were, and so whilst my notes, my letters, and things like that weren't really kind of a marketing idea, they were an opportunity for me to kind of touch base with another human being. So they all evolved from that, and that's why I'm so reluctant to stop doing it.
Yeah.
Even though it's becoming unrealistic. But we'll see how we go. They just mean so much more to me than just a thank you.
Clearly, that comes through incredibly clearly, David. And you know, the fact that your newsletters, you know, that you said you sometimes you use them to get things off your chest. I mean, I feel like this is exactly the kind of business that so many people yearn for. The challenge is so many people aren't necessarily aware of it. You shared with me before that you know, you started a business that gave 50% of its profits to charities, but you didn't know that there was a name for that kind of business, a social enterprise. And that came, someone from, was it Social Traders came to you? Do you want to share that story?
Well, that's right. I got a call 2 years into it. I was still living in that warehouse, and I always felt uncomfortable trying to categorize what it was I was doing. And, you know, I knew I wasn't a charity. I wasn't a not-for-profit. I wasn't an incorporated association. I guess I was a sole trader, but kind of I wasn't really aware of anyone who was doing anything that, you know, gave so much of what they earned to charity. And in those years, it was quite literally 100% of the profit. The 50% baked into our cost of goods sold. So it's actually a dollar amount that is allocated. And to that end, you know, the charities have always gotten paid first before I get paid. And of course, when you're running a little business and with overheads and so forth, you know, I was doing a second job to actually raise, get the money to pay the charities. Yeah, and then I got a call out of the blue from Social Traders, who are the Australian certification body for social enterprises, and you know, they asked me that question: what are you? Do you know what you are? And I was like, no, I don't. What am I? And they said, oh, you're a social enterprise. I was like, well
welcome to our world.
And that was fantastic, because as I said, at that time, you know, I really was hiding out in this warehouse and just throwing myself so much into the work. And, you know, I wasn't even meant to be there. It was, you know, you weren't allowed to be living in your warehouse. So I just had a swag. I rolled out, and I was always first to work and last to leave, you know, from all the other businesses in there, because I actually never left, and you know, I couldn't get caught sleeping there. So just doing those extraordinary hours gave the business an incredible start. So yeah, he called up and said, "What, you're a social enterprise. Come in and meet us." And I went and met them, and I discovered I had this family, and it's a really large family, and they're really supportive. There are so many of us.
And when was that you discovered that?
Oh, gee, that would have been 2011, late
Okay,
2011.
so you've been trading for a couple of years
For
before.
2 years, yeah.
Would it be fair to say that, your business was, the genesis of your business was part of your recovery from,
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
and what comes through as well, you talk on your website and, as a social enterprise, you donate 50% of your profits to charities. But as you said, the dollar amount is actually fixed. So I don't know how you articulate your purpose, but if your purpose is to support the supporters of charities, you put that first before you even looked after yourself
Absolutely.
financially.
Yeah.
Which, isn't an easy way to start a business, but I think really very clearly shows that that you were driven by the very purpose that you actually wanted to give back to those charities and support the people who supported them.
It is still the main driver of this. I'm sure I could go off and get another job somewhere else and earn 3-4 times as much as I do. But as I guess the title of your podcast, it's not all about money. Love's got to play a part in this as well.
And usually it swings so far the other way, right?
Correct.
But in your case, it feels like it's really been rooted and grounded in love. And I know, at a social enterprise model, and particularly your model with a fixed dollar amount, means that as you're starting a business and growing it, usually the profits you make are reinvested into the business so you can start buying more equipment or whatever it is you need to do to fuel the growth of the business. But you've kind of had your hands tied behind your back you've tied your own hands behind your back to give to those charities.
Enjoying the podcast? If you're looking for more inspiration, head to our website, thecauseeffect.com.au, for more resources on how you can start using your business as a force for good. Or buy the For Love and Money book. Every copy sold allows us to protect 1 square metre of rainforest. Help us save 10,000 square metres by 2025.
So I'd love to, I have no doubt that would have its challenges as you're growing the business. I'd love our listeners to understand, what do you then rely on? Is it the support of your customers back to spread the word?
Yeah, it initially that's what it was. This business is growing almost entirely on word of mouth. There's been very little advertising done. We're fortunate that we support nearly 300 charities, and so occasionally those charities will do a little shout out to their supporters and let them know that this is an option. If you're going to buy wine, people buy wine. You may as well buy wine that supports the cause you love. So yeah, it's interesting. I have tied my hands behind my back, and I've just had faith. Faith has kind of driven me for the last 12 years, and I've believed that the business would grow, and the business has grown. And it's an economies of scale thing. Eventually, you're making enough money through profit that giving half of it away doesn't hurt. So last year we hit 56% of the profit went to charity.
Yeah.
Which is the nicest we've got to 50%. And it won't be long now before it actually hits 50%. And after that, we then start increasing the donation amount we make to charity. So we'll always be sitting at that 50%. But the business is growing and it's kind of reached a sustainable point. And it's been twice as hard as most other businesses, I'd imagine, because you are, as you said, you're giving away all those marketing dollars, all those, if you need to repair a forklift or whatever it is you need to do, that soaks up money that you've given to a charity.
Mm. And do you know what? I mean, you've gone down this road of social enterprise ahead of the market. So I know there are other social enterprises who started years ago as well. But when you look at how the market is responding, and by that I mean consumers supporting brands with purpose, or brands who, social enterprise brands, employees, investors. I was just looking at the most recent Edelman Trust Barometer from 2022. And are you familiar with Edelman?
No.
So they've been tracking trust in major institutions for 20 years at least, across the world, including in Australia. And I've just got the figures up here. All stakeholders now hold business accountable. So in Australia, 56% of people either buy or advocate for brands based on their beliefs and values. 57% choose a place to work based on the same thing, and 64% invest based on their beliefs and values. So, you've been in this area. You've been building a social enterprise business since 2009, but right here we are in 2022, and the market has shifted, where customers, employees, and investors are now looking to invest their money, their time, and their investment dollars in businesses like yours. So, you've laid the groundwork, and it sounds like things are already looking up, but I hope to see you go from strength to strength, because I think what you're doing and what you have done, David, is extraordinary.
No, thank you. I think those stats are pretty extraordinary. And I think there is a shift. I think people are losing faith in governments to make change, particularly when you look at the business communities and what they're trying to do. And so it's almost like they're trying to drag the governments along with them. And, if the business communities are doing that, then that's clearly being driven by customers. It's being driven by shareholders. And so, it's an exciting time. I think there's still a little way to go, but, it almost feels like we're just starting with Goodwill Wine, and we're fortunate that we've got a nice healthy track record to hit the ground running. And certainly I'm looking forward to the future and watching people become more ethical, because it's pretty easy. If you're going to buy something, you may as well buy something that's going to help the world, not just yourself.
Absolutely. And so let's get into, you said you've got 300 or over 300 charities that you support. I'm not going to ask you to list them all, but can you give us a flavour of some of your most supported charities? Actually, do you know which are the top charities?
Well, yeah, we do. On the website, if you go into the charities, you can see the ones that have basically received, the most money from us. I think we've got the top 10 there, and it's a curious breakdown of charities there, because whilst there are the usual suspects, the big charities, the ones that have kind of very large impacts and very large followings, there's also some little charities in amongst them. So we've got
That's good to hear. That's good to hear that it's a mix.
It's great, isn't it? And that's been driven by their supporters. So whilst we've got Animals Australia who've been the biggest recipient of the money we've donated. I think we're getting close to $60,000, and that's equated to 6 international animal cruelty investigations that we've funded, which is incredibly exciting for us. And then the Sea Shepherd, for a while there, we were selling a lot of wine for Sea Shepherd while they were in the Southern Ocean, and we ended up finding out that we'd donated enough money over a year there that we'd actually paid for enough fuel for the Steve Irwin to sit in the slipway of the Nishin Maru, the big Japanese whaling.
Yep.
And the whole purpose of sitting in the slipway is to stop the fleet from unloading. And in stopping the fleet from unloading, they can't go out and catch more whales. And so for 3 days, we stopped the fleet from unloading, and Sea Shepherd told us that we'd have saved 12 whales, and that was amazing. And then there's organisations like the Orangutan Project, where we've helped them rescue and rehabilitate 50 orangutans, and the
Beautiful.
I think that's a really nice one. And there's the Australian Marine Conservation Society we support. We help them push for a plastic bag ban in Queensland with the money that we donated, which is really exciting. And then little organisations like AirNet Rescue, who rescue Airedale Terriers, and they've been with us for a while, and we've raised, I think, $6,000 for them, and that's allowed them to because it's quite expensive to actually rescue and then rehome a dog, but that's certainly helped them do their work. The Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, we've provided enough money to give hot meals 45,000 hot meals to people seeking asylum in Australia.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, they're an organisation close to my heart. So yeah, as you say, there's hundreds, and we could do this for the next 3 hours.
But the point I'd like to make there is you don't just donate money; you actually look at what impact that money goes to create. So it's very tangible.
Yeah, I think it needs to be. At first, when I first began, I kind of thought, well, who am I to not so much dictate, but ask a charity, what did you do with the money? As far as I was concerned, if they wanted to use that money to do a Christmas party for their volunteers, then so be it. That's up to them. But I know people have become, a lot more suspicious of charities over the years, and I think the Sea Shepherd one was the one that actually made me sit up and go, wow, there are some really tangible results. And I think really, and this does come a little bit down to marketing, at the end of the day, is people would like to see a tangible result for the profit from the case that they purchased. And, we've been around long enough to actually have tangible results now, which is great.
Yeah, and many of them, and I encourage listeners to go to the website and have a look, because you'll be there for a little while. What are you most proud of when it comes to Goodwill Wine?
Oh, gee. I think I'm really proud of the journey, the sacrifices I made to get it to this point. I think, I dug pretty deep, and I was proud. I am proud that, I've managed to build it into something. It's taken a long time. I'm proud of the people I've been able to surround myself with. They're just such good quality people, and it's just a privilege to kind of have them in my life and have them in Goodwill Wine's life. And that goes for the customers as well. And I'm really proud that I'm going to leave a legacy of some sort. That's something that I know my daughter, and she's only 9, she's just turned 9, but she's really interested in what I'm doing. And whilst, she wants to be an astronaut, movie star, ballerina, vet.
Depending on the day of the week.
Depending on all at the same time, I think. But so this business may not be for her, but I think I've instilled in her, you know, along with other people who've instilled it, I'm sure, a really strong sense of kindness in her. And I think that's going to bode well for her as she gets older. And if, you know, at the end of the day, if you know, Goodwill Wine's still going, even if she's not working in it, I think there's going to be something, you know, just the fact that Dad started this thing. And so, yeah, the legacy, I think, is something I'm proud of.
I think you should be incredibly proud of that. Someone very wise told me, they were talking about legacy, and they reframed it in my mind when they said, everybody leaves a legacy. You get to choose what your legacy is, you know, but be very clear about that. Every single one of us leaves a legacy, good, bad, or indifferent. The fact is that you've decided to show up and throw yourself into, you know, a labour of love, essentially. There's a quote that I found, and I put it at the beginning of my book, For Love and Money. It's from Nelson Mandela, and he says, "A winner is a dreamer who never gives up." And I love that quote because, to me, it you know, it redefines this whole idea of success being about money and material stuff, to someone who, you know, dreams big, and when you don't give up on your dreams, it's because they matter, right?
Yeah.
So that to me is completely intertwined with this idea of legacy. I'd love to get your advice, or I'd love you to share with our listeners your advice with business leaders who either, you know, they've got their own business or they work within a business, and they're thinking about their role as influencers in society, as, you know, having a responsibility to use their business as a vehicle for good, but they're not actually doing anything yet. They're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
From your own experience, and what you have learned and gained out of this experience, what would your advice to them be?
Well, firstly, I think someone who might be in that position, I'm so envious of them, of being able to reverse engineer what I've done, and to be able to begin building impact into an already successful business, and to be able to control that, to be able to lean into impact, and be able to not hurt the business, or at least be able to embed impact into your business and draw the line where you want to stop, where it's still healthy business, but you're still doing this wonderful impact. I think, you know, that would be so wonderful to be able to do that. And sometimes I wonder whether or not that, in fact, should have been the path that I took. And if, in fact, I may have been able to create more impact than I have, if I had have just built a wine business and then reverse engineered the impact into it. I think, you know, so that you'd start with a theory of change, and that might take, you know, a day of some solid work to work out what it is that you really want to, you know, what purpose it is that you want to achieve. And, you know, I think the engagement that you could create both through your employees and then your customers would completely blow you away. I think that, you know, just a for-profit business may not understand the engagement that building impact and purpose into your business can create. So it would be so exciting to be a profitable business looking to enter this space, and so powerful for them. And then there is so much help out there now. There's become, you know, there's people who have become experts in this. not dissimilar to yourself, who can offer the advice that a business needs in order to safely enter, the impact for profit, for purpose world. Yeah, I just embrace it, run with it, do it. It will be the best thing that your business has ever done.
Brilliant, wise words. Thank you, David. And I feel like you are clearly a pioneer in this area of business, and being a pioneer has its challenges, right? But Goodwill Wine is Australia's only certified social enterprise wine company, and that foundation has such strong credibility that yes, as tough as it may have been, or as many challenges as you may have faced since starting the business back in 2009, I suspect that it's going to hold you in good stead over the next few years as you navigate your way forward. So thank you for actually starting and providing a beacon for others to follow. I'd like to end with a final question.
Mm-hmm.
We're recording this interview in 2022. We've got less than 8 years till 2030, which is the target date for the UN Global Goals. There's no doubt that businesses need to be an active part of the solution. There is no doubt that expectation from consumers, employees, and investors is upon business to be a part of that solution. But there are still some business leaders who are still unsure about how far to lean in to social purpose. They're still thinking of it as corporate social responsibility or giving back on the side when we can afford it. If you could share one thing to convince them of how vital social purpose is today, what would it be?
Oh, gee, there's a lot of things. I think, clearly we're all in a lot of trouble here on this planet. I really believe that. And I believe businesses starting to embrace that as well. And that's why things like ESG have become, so huge for a lot of very large businesses. If you don't embrace it, you're going to get left behind. The public's demanding it, but it's good for business. And by building that purpose into your business, it becomes addictive. It becomes one of the things that really drives you on, not just the relentless pursuit of profit, but the relentless pursuit of purpose. And it becomes like an endorphin hit, like a drug, and it affects everyone. Everyone in that business's orbit will be getting a little hit of that endorphin. And it's the only way forward, I think, and businesses will suffer if they don't start embracing it. And we're not near the top of the curve yet, but we're halfway up. Mm-hmm. And so just don't be too late.
Brilliant. David, thank you so much for your time, for your efforts in starting Goodwill Wine and getting it to where it is today. To our listeners, I urge you to make the next thing you do to go on to Goodwill Wine's website, goodwillwine.com.au. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Do yourself a favour, go check it out now, get your order in and choose your charity, and then share it with someone who would also enjoy it. So thank you so much, David, for joining us. How should people get in touch with you if they would like to learn more?
Well, I think on the website we've got contact details, and as always, I find myself talking to people almost daily now who are looking to enter the social enterprise space or try to embed some sort of purpose into their business. And such a generous community that not just myself, but by all means, you can contact me, and I would love to chat with you about what ideas you have and offer absolutely any sort of assistance that I can in helping you with your journey. But yeah, on the website you can you can contact us.
Brilliant. Thank you. And that's very generous of you. And one thing we did forget to mention in this interview is your wines are vegan friendly, aren't they?
Well, yeah, they are. So basically most wine in Australia is animal friendly. It's just the fining that people use in wines. In the old days they might have used blood. Now, they might use egg whites or fish, milk. But similarly, you can use filters. You can use clay. There's all sorts of ways to get the sediment out of wine, and probably 70% of wine don't use animal products, and so technically, it's a vegan product. So yeah, all our
Brilliant. Just thought I'd squeeze that one in. I realised we'd forgotten to touch on it. Thank you, David. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here. I appreciate your time too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the For Love and Money podcast. If you'd like to take a deeper dive into the purpose movement, visit us at thecauseeffect.com.au. And remember, doing good is good for business. So if you're not doing good, then what are you doing?